To play for you just a quick mash between Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump. Just sort of hear how they framed what happened on this whole vote. Just take a quick listen.
Our caucus members have been torn between two awful alternatives, and my colleagues and I have wrestled with which alternative would be worse for the American people. Whatever the outcome, our caucus will be united in our determination to continue the long-term fight to stop Donald Trump's dangerous war on our democracy and on America's working families.
I appreciate Senator Schumer, and I think he did the right thing. Really, I'm very impressed by that.
So Trump thinks he did the right thing. Pretty much every Democrat in town is looking at the minority leader with crossed eyes at this hour. He says he wrestled with the alternative. You've been inside the room. What are Republicans thinking right now about their ability to absolutely punk Schumer into making this move the way he did when he knew that that's not where his party was?
Well, having served in the Congress and experienced several shutdowns, and I pushed back against my party on shutdowns and voted against the majority of my party, who were all jazzed up about doing a shutdown. I always thought they were a mistake. And look, I think Chuck Schumer did the thing that he had to do. He realized there was no off-ramp. Once the government shut down, how are they going to get out of this? Trump was going to have a lot of leverage at that point. I always felt that way. Look, a long-term continuing resolution through the end of the year, we used to have a word for this. We called it failure. It's a disaster to do business this way. But that is better than shutting down the government. And also, Donald Trump, remember, was going to have a lot of leverage because he was going to determine who was an essential or a non-essential employee. They were going to make a lot of these folks non-essential. It would have been very hard to recall some of those furloughed people, thanks to Doge and Elon Musk. So at the end of the day, Schumer was in a difficult situation. Yeah, his base is really furious with him. But I think at the end of the day, they should appreciate what he did. This shutdown would have diverted attention away from Donald Trump's tariffs and away from all the other things that he's been doing on Doge, all his problems, and probably put a lot of the focus back on the Senate Democrats. So I think Schumer stood up and did what a leader has to do.
Representative Edwards Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, unsurprisingly, sees it a little bit differently than Representative Dent. Take a listen.
I think there is a deep sense of outrage and betrayal. There are members of Congress who have won Trump-held districts in some of the most difficult territory in the United States, who walked the plank and took innumerable risks in order to defend the American people, in order to defend Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, just to see Senate Democrats even consider acquiescing to Elon Musk. I think it is a huge slap in the face. We cannot afford to be in an every person for themselves kind of moment. We need to work together and as a team in order to usher our country through this very dark time.
So, of course, Representative Ocasio-Cortez said that before the vote was taken. The vote went the way that she predicted. She raises a number of things there. One, they let frontliners in the House go out there and take a hard vote. Schumer signaled he was going to fight, and then he didn't fight. Why was there such a disconnect, not even between House leadership and Senate leadership, but between what the Senate Minority Leader was saying and then what he ultimately did?
Well, and it only took 24 hours. Look, I think that, the reality here is there was no message, no strategy, and at the end of the day, no leadership. And this is really a black mark, I think, on Chuck Schumer. You cannot signal on Wednesday that you want to fight, and then on Thursday you cave. And so now Republicans know that all they have to do is play Democrats, and it'll work. And I think that Representative Ocasio-Cortez is right when she says that frontline members who are in the toughest districts in the country, now have to go out there having taken really a very difficult vote without any support from the Senate leadership. I think it's deeply disappointing. And I think if Democrats had started and Chuck Schumer had started with a serious message in advance, then they could have sold to the American people that, one, this was not a continuing resolution. In fact, it cut government spending. What a continuing resolution does is it continues government funding as it is until appropriations bills can come through. That is not what happened here. And frankly, they have a slush fund, the administration does, because there were no parameters put on the spending that was done. And so now Republicans can do whatever it is that they want over these next several weeks, and especially Trump and Musk. They have carte blanche in the administration, and I think this is a real black mark, a stain on Chuck Schumer's leadership.
You know, this is the bill, ladies and gentlemen. I printed the bill out earlier this week because I'm like, let me read the bill. Because everybody's saying it's something in the bill, something in the bill. What's in this bill? Continuing resolution? Well, there are cuts on page 17, on page 22. I wrote this down. There are cuts on page 46, cuts on page 42, 22, cuts on page 62, cuts on page 63, cuts on page 64. Page 62 is where they cut $300 million from the Cures Act. Burn pits for veterans. Page 22 is where they zero out the money for the COPS program. I didn't write down which page it was on, but within this document, $1 billion cut from Washington, D.C. I'm a D.C. resident, and I'm pissed.
Yep.
Okay, so, you know, there's actually little that the Senate minority leader can say, and the 10 Democrats that voted with the Republicans can say, to appease somebody like me. I'm about to change my registration to independent, first and foremost. Shout out to Hakeem Jeffries, though, because the congressional Democrats stayed together. And I'm just going to, I don't have a question. I'm just going to read what Rebecca Traister had to say. This is what Rebecca Traister said. Let's get Rebecca Traister up there on the thing. Rebecca Traister, she writes this, and she, on her Substack, she says, in 2024, Democrats ran on warnings that Trump was going to destroy our democracy. And now that he and his team are very much in the process of doing just that, these same politicians are questioning whether or not to stand up to him and his party at one of the first opportunities they have to meaningfully do so. The only opportunity, I would add, there's not another option for Senate or Democratic or Senate Democrats or House Democrats to effectively push back. This was it. They blew it. The Democratic Tea Party was born the same day that Chuck Schumer took to that podium to read that very well-crafted statement that told us he folded like a paper napkin.
Well, and that's why you have members of the Democratic caucus privately encouraging Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to primary Schumer.
Anyone can primary him.
So on that point, which was very well stated, I might add, you know, Congressman Dent, I think I hear what you're saying about what Schumer was up against here in terms of the reality of having to, you know, shut the government down. But here's where I have a problem. Republicans have effectively already done that. I mean, they have fired, entire agencies. I mean, they're people not at desks. They've invited people back to the office just so they can fire them. So I don't understand where the leverage was that everyone's talking about Republicans would have had in a shutdown when they've already been shutting down the government. So, I mean, help me connect that, because I get the legislative thing, the paper, the bill that Simone put up, and I get the continuing resolution piece of this. But if the argument is, well, we have to avert a shutdown because people will be hurt, well, damn it, I see what's happening out on the street. I know small business owners who aren't even federal employees have had to close their businesses or fire their personnel because of what's happening, what Trump and Doge are doing to them. So help me make that connection, because I don't see it.
Well, everything I agree with everything you just said there about the problems of Doge, these indiscriminate cuts, these canceling of contracts are affecting people in really negative ways. It's very bad. Now, again, if we go into a government shutdown, we have to remember that the President of the United States is going to end up furloughing a lot more federal employees because he's going to determine them as non-essential. And so the damage that they're doing at Doge is very real. But my argument is, and I think Schumer's argument is, that they can do even more damage during a shutdown. And I didn't see an off-ramp. And I agree with what Donna said in terms of there is no coordination between Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, apparently. It's also clear that if you're going to fold, as Schumer did, you should do it sooner, not later, and they raised expectations. But I think the Democrats really did not have a coordinated plan on strategy, planning, and messaging. That said, a shutdown is a disaster. This is a bad bill. I'm not saying this is a good bill. It is not a clean continuing resolution. It's a partisan one. It largely funds the government as is, but as pointed out, there were some cuts here and there. Defense got a slight increase. Non-defense got a slight cut. Yeah, Washington, D.C. took it on the chin. But I still would argue that shutdown would have been bad. There was no off-ramp. How do you get out of the shutdown once you are in? I keep saying Trump and Musk would have had a lot of opportunity to do even more damage than they've done already.
Delegate Stacey Plaskett tagged Simone in this tweet that I want to show you. And she said, to be clear, y'all get it right. It was not Democrats who gave up the fight. With Representative Jeffries, all but one House Democrats did what needed to be done. It was 10 Democrat senators who gave in, all caps, so get it right. Delegate Plaskett,
get it right.
Please stop tagging Simone at 11 o'clock at night, because then I get these texts at 11 o'clock at night when I'm trying to go to sleep for a morning show. But there is such an appetite, right, to see Democrats fight. Right. And yes, there's a political calculus. And yes, was this a good bill? Was it? That's almost not the point. It is about being in the fight and showing that they were in the fight. And House Democrats were in the fight and they were organized. It was on the Senate side that this fell apart. And the fact that you have now that turmoil within the party, where does that head?
Well, I think this is an absolute disaster. One, because of what it signals to Republicans, that there's a willingness to cave, that there's a desire to cave. When you're not getting anything out of it, I would argue that what we've had up until now is effectively a government shutdown. And so what is the difference between Friday or Saturday at midnight and Monday with a shutdown? There is no difference because the president and DOJ are already conducting a government shutdown. They are shuttering agencies. They are letting go of employees. They're having people having to take all of this to the courts. And so, what's the difference? Why cave when when the administration is already doing to you on one day what they would do to you the next day? And so I think if Democrats want their voters to show up in 2026, they're not going to show up for a party that's not willing to fight for them. If you're not willing to fight for me, why would I fight for you?
I mean, this is, I think, the bolding and underlining point. Congressman Dent, his point about the shutdown and essential and non-essential is absolutely correct. And I think I would just underscore here that in a shutdown, when government workers are furloughed, they have the promise of back pay and being rehired. If the administration, once the shutdown was over, decided not to get these people back, boom, lawsuit. But what we have right now is carte blanche now. It is codified what they are doing in some of this, in this document. And I don't really know how, what the next fight is for Democrats, in the elected Democrats from here. There's not another one where they need it.